everybody. Welcome to School Psych Podcast. So excited to be here. Hope everybody's hanging in with all the end of the year approaching evaluations. I know I am just absolutely buried in last minute, everybody has a disability type of scenarios. And so that's good. But I have tomorrow off from school. So I'm excited. I don't need to get myself up early in the morning. But really happy to be here. Rebecca is not with us tonight. We miss her dearly. So I know I cannot take her place in all the multitasking that she does in watching all the social media feeds and taking all the questions and whatnot. But I am going to tell people to, you can reach us on Twitter with the hashtag Psych Podcast. And you can also reach us. The best way to reach us probably for the live broadcast is on YouTube, signing into your Google YouTube account right there and putting questions right in the chat box that's right next to the video. So that's a great way. And you can also send us a message on the Facebook School Psych Podcast page as well. So I'll be trying to look out for that. And then, of course, after we air, we are on iTunes and all the podcast places. So feel free to listen to us after the fact and shoot us an email or a note or a message of some sort to comment and participate. We definitely enjoy that. But my name is Rachel, if I haven't already said that. I work in Maryland as a school psychologist. I'm going to pass it over to Eric, who's going to introduce himself and our guests. Eric.
All right. Thank you, Rachel. My name is Eric, and I'm a school psychologist in the state of Connecticut. And I'm excited because I know two of our guests are professors here in Connecticut, and another is a professor in New Hampshire. So they are neighbors and colleagues of ours here in Connecticut. And we're really talking about something that's incredibly important, that mental health connection and mind-body connection and work that our wonderful professors are going to talk about this evening. And already one of our colleagues, students at University of Connecticut is chiming in to say hello. So we're excited. I'm going to introduce all three and just read a little bit about their bios. And I'm going to start with Dr. Sasu, who is a friend of mine and a colleague. We go back to supervising school psychology interns through Southern Connecticut State University, where she was site coordinator and I was a field supervisor. So I'm very excited to have her on. Dr. Sasu has a PhD and is an NCSP. She is the founding director of the Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning and is a professor in the Counseling and School Psychology Department at Southern Connecticut State University. Previously, she was the director of strategic initiatives for the Center of Excellence on Autism Spectrum Disorders, also at Southern Connecticut. Prior to joining the faculty there, Dr. Sasu was employed by the Center for Behavioral Education and Research at the University of Connecticut, where she served as the implementation coordinator of system-wide positive behavior supports across multiple urban school districts throughout the state of Connecticut. Her professional history also includes service as a public school psychologist and work within a private practice of pediatric neuropsychology. Outside of her professional work, Dr. Sasu is committed to service within her larger community. She's a member of her local Board of Education and serves on multiple state-level boards, including the Autism Spectrum Disorders Advisory Council for the Department of Social Services. She has a bachelor's in psychology and a master's from the University of Pennsylvania, and also holds master's and 6-year professional diplomas in both school psychology and educational leadership from the University of Connecticut, and her Doctor of Educational Psychology. She's a licensed psychologist, nationally certified school psychologist, and is a mother of 3 children and loves to explore the outdoors with her family. So we're excited to have Dr. Sasu with us. Dr. Cheryl Makel is a faculty member in counseling and school psychology at Rivier University in Nashua, New Hampshire. She holds state and national certifications in school psychology. She is currently serving a second term as treasurer of APA's Division 16 Executive Committee, and she's the chair of the University Institutional Review Board at Rivier. She also serves on the editorial board for the International Journal of School and Educational Psychology. Dr. Makel is published in the areas of mind-body health and wellness, physical activity, and classroom disruptive behaviors, among others, and has published a recent co-edited book, a book with Dr. Bray titled Promoting Mind-Body Health in Schools, Interventions for Mental Health Professionals. So welcome, Dr. Makel, as well, and Dr. Bray. I have to say, I've only had the privilege really of sort of knowing Dr. Bray sort of on the outskirts. Everybody I know knows her. Everybody gives glowing reports about her. And I'm just excited to be able to sit and talk with her because she's done all kinds of things and has this reputation in the state of Connecticut, at least, that I'm aware of as being both an amazing professor, practitioner, and school psychologist. So we're excited for all three of you. But it was just kind of neat to have Dr. Bray here as well, just because I've, constantly heard so much about her. And I think we've emailed a few times back and forth, but not really been able to connect beyond that. So, but Dr. Bray is a professor and director of school psychology at the University of Connecticut. She is a fellow of both American Psychological Association and the American Psychology Society. She's an elected member of the Society for the Study of School Psychology. She is licensed as a psychologist in the state of Connecticut, holds national certification in school psychology, as well as state certification and licensure in speech-language pathology. She received her doctorate in 1997 and has published or has in press over 200 articles, chapters, and reviews in the professional literature, along with a number of books. Further, she has presented over 150 scholarly papers at national and international conferences. In several studies on faculty productivity, it was determined that Dr. Bray was the first or second most prolific contributor to the 5 primary journals in school psychology. Further, she serves as associate editor of the International Journal of School and Educational Psychology and has served as an associate editor of School Psych Quarterly, and she's the editor of the first Oxford Handbook of School Psychology, and has also guest edited numerous issues of psychology in the schools, including topics on video self-modeling, behavior disorders, positive psychology, statistical reform, childhood obesity counseling, and many others. As co-principal investigator, she has secured over $2 million in student training contracts and has also been involved in state, national, and international professional associations. So I want to welcome the three of you. We're really excited to talk with you, but just reading, your bios and the glowing things that you've all been involved in just makes me more excited to talk with the three of you as well. So for those who are viewing, I know we have your names underneath, but just for order, so people can put a name to your face. Dr. Sasu, could you raise your hand? And Dr. Makel, could you raise your hand? And then Dr. Bray, of course, you'll be the third. So welcome. We're excited to have the three of you here.
Thank you for having us.
Sure. So I know I could talk with you about so many things in the field of school psychology, but I know you've done a lot of work in mental health as well as the mind-body connection. Was there a specific project that you've been involved in recently or research? I know we mentioned the book that you've co-edited, Cheryl and Melissa as well. Why don't we start with that?
Well, I'll start. I was going to, when you started to ask me that question, I was thinking that of you said a recent project, but going back recently, and also into my beginning of mind-body health was with asthma. When I first was, considering looking at physical health indicators and how it relates to psychological well-being. And that was, a long time ago, probably about 15, 17 years ago, I started to look at asthma and using various psychological treatments, but looking at, hard biological data. So in that case, where we're using standardized spirometry and looking at lung capacity and so forth. So we found some, pretty good findings that, especially for individuals, if they had, indicators of anxiety or stress that either initiated or exacerbated their lung functioning, that various treatments worked. And one in particular was, two really, relaxation and guided imagery and written emotional expression. And you both have been involved at various times with me. I forget because we've done so much research, over the years, but with different students. And, of course, they're both graduates of the program here, as am I. But I'm also running one this summer. We're just putting in an IRB now. And so I have not stopped looking at asthma related to psychological health since I started in the mind-body health.
So the study you're referring to was with kids in schools, right?
Right. Yes.
Yeah. So we did one here with adult
Mhm.
students at UConn with mindfulness and asthma. So people with asthma often have anxiety,
Mhm.
and when they have symptoms of asthma that increase, the anxiety increases, and it kind of goes on and on, back and forth, and they kind of ramp each other up, right? So that's
Right. Yeah. So I've done all ages from, elementary school, not preschool, with asthma through adulthood. And that's right. Right now, when I take them into the study, we do screen for indicators of anxiety or triggers to their stress triggers to their asthma, because over the years with various comparative studies, it does appear they are better suited for the treatment. Yeah.
So I was thinking, as Melissa was talking, and you said about what, 15 to 17 years ago?
Oh, I know. So I forget.
And I
Or
will
more. I've been
say
here-
that
probably
my
more.
experience with you was probably closer to 20 years ago.
Well, I've been at UConn for 21, but I was started
So-
at St. John's for 2, and then I was
Right.
in the schools with the speech path that you picked up on beforehand. But in school psych as a professor, it's
Right.
been
But one of the research,
21.
one of the
23 years.
first research undertakings or endeavors that I participated with you on was asthma and yoga as an intervention. So as Cheryl
Right.
just noted, the comorbidity of asthma and anxiety. And of course, if you can't breathe, right, any one of us, right,
Yeah.
if we have difficulty breathing, is going to necessarily probably start to have a bit of feelings of anxiety and
Lung
that will
reaction,
be right, a lung reaction, and feel and that might be exacerbated by your anxiety might be exacerbated by
It also
your-
initiates it.
or initiate.
It also initiates.
Fill in
it.
the words when I can't come
so
up
you
with them,
described
will
it
you?
where it exacerbates.
Okay.
It initiates and it does both.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So anyway, that study, one of the first studies that I became involved with you
Yeah,
was
yoga.
yoga
Yeah, I
as an
remember,
intervention for asthma, and that was probably 2002, 2003, somewhere around there. So
Yeah, because I did do this at St. John's too
right.
when I was at St. John's.
So the mind body health piece, even though you probably weren't terming it in that manner back then, it was probably before that sort of caught on as a
Perhaps.
really catchy term in popular
Mhm.
culture. Although it was still ongoing, it
Right.
was what you were doing.
Yeah. No, my
Right,
my
right.
original research was just to remind you.
Yeah.
No, I did a lot of classroom management, that sort of thing,
I
and
do
then
forget.
and stuttering, because I'm a speech path. So my dissertation was video self-modeling with stuttering, which I still do, and we use VSM and now virtual reality and those things. Now I target. Even though I am running a stuttering study too that's coming up. I didn't mention that because video self-modeling or virtual reality for fluency or stuttering is really not, if you're going to precisely define mind-body health, I don't put that in that arena so much at this point. We don't know enough about the physiological of the larynx and so forth.
Mhm.
But I still use those treatments and technology related to physical health outcomes in other areas. But asthma has been a big emphasis and a long-term emphasis, and we've used various treatments, relaxation guided imagery, the written emotional expression, yoga. There's about 12 treatments that we'll get into, I think, right? That was our hope, because the mind body health treatments that have the data are the ones that we, have been promoting more research on to justify them and use them in the schools. And I do help out in the schools 1 day a week, and I've done things using them, with kids there as well. So
the book 20 minutes ago when you asked,
yeah. Oh, but
and just the
sorry.
term mind body health in general,
Yeah.
which we've now used a few times, we're talking about either a psychological intervention that has a physical impact, or a physical intervention that has a psychological impact, or an intervention from one side that impacts both. So with the asthma and yoga study, there were improvements in lung functioning and on anxiety, correct?
Correct.
Right.
Yep.
So that is what we think is so cool about all this.
Right. It has,
Absolutely.
yeah. When we wrote that book, we spent a long time defining what is mind body
Yeah.
health. But exactly what Cheryl you said is right. Yeah.
A lot of cafe meetings and
Yeah.
conversations.
And a lot of
about what are we
looking at
talking
other
about,
literature.
because we're
Yeah.
going around and around. But
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So the mind is either impacting the body or the body is impacting the mind. And it goes back to, early philosophizing and dualism. I mean, this is not a new, it's not a new idea. It's certainly not. But transcending them into treatments that are empirically based, can be used easily in the schools. They're low cost. We were just talking, not much time, and they have good outcomes. psychologically and physically, that's where our our research is.
Yeah, so there's not a lot of training required, doesn't take a lot of time
No.
or space. There's strategies that kids or adults in the building, we've been doing some PDs with teachers and other educators in Connecticut and helping them to think about things they can do, but also things they can employ with the students with whom they work. So there are things that they can learn and then kind of go off and do, kind of just about anytime, anywhere type of thing. So it's really appealing in that way too. Kind of lifelong strategies, low cost.
Anytime we do an episode on kind of the social emotional side, the counseling side, I feel like I'm weaker than I am on the academic side and the assessment side. And so I always rely on Eric and Rebecca. But, in looking over some of the stuff that you're talking about, I'm like, I do that too. So it's, all my kids that I do see for counseling, they all know their deep breathing, their guided imagery, their muscle relaxation. Like that's like the one thing about in like kind of the counseling realm that I feel kind of comfortable with, and I see good outcomes with it. And like you said, it's not expensive to implement. It's kind of easy to do within a school setting, and it's something that can be used, when a kid's getting anxiety taking a test or something, they can take some deep breaths. They can do these things kind of on the go. You don't need any supplies or things to implement it. So I feel like it's really appealing to school psychologists, and especially school psychologists that maybe don't feel super comfortable with all the more advanced kind of theories. Rebecca can talk on and on about ACT and CBT and things like that. I feel like this is something that, is super effective and also isn't so intensive. Does that make sense, or am I?
Yeah, it's kind of foundational to a lot of things.
Yeah.
Yes, foundation.
I think you just touched upon so many things that are of import. So one is that one of the things that ends up coming out of as a criticism of a lot of school psychology training programs is that we don't get enough in the way of counseling preparation, right? In our training. And yet when a kid is in crisis or having a meltdown, the person to whom everyone else brings that kid, right, is the one who has the placard outside their door that says school psychologist. And the expectation is that you know how to de-escalate and how to address the needs of that student. And the nice thing is, as you've just so adeptly said, Rachel, that some of these interventions are quick and easy. They don't require a lot of tools or manipulatives or space or time. You don't have to have a great degree of training. And, as Melissa and Cheryl just highlighted, they are scientifically rooted. There is evidence behind them. And we can all of us can very quickly teach people how to do them and how to do them well. So it really is about getting the training out to people to say, here's how you can do this. Doesn't need to take a lot of your time, doesn't need to take a lot of time out of kids' days or kids out of the classroom. You can in fact do some of these things right in your classroom. You can do them yourselves as adults, right? Like, you need a 2-minute break? Sure, take it. It's going to do everybody good. And we know that, mostly they're going to work for you to recenter, regroup, and refocus. So all of what you just said was packaged up in all of those things and touched upon all of those elements. So,
and bringing it into the schools too is an easy way to sort of make it a practice. I think that's the hardest thing about all of these strategies, is not that they're complicated or take a long time to learn or be effective, but you have to do it all the time to really gain the benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, no, I was just going to say what, Rachel, when you mentioned the other formal therapies, really the components are very similar, like focused attention, breathing, those are in those. Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of what you said. There's a foundational piece that runs common across a lot of these therapies. And then, like you said, you don't really need a lot of tools and everything to do it, right? Mm-hmm. But I've been playing around with that. I'm hooked on this idea of the Mind Body Health Toolkit, because I wanted to give that either to students in the schools, or maybe play it into research and see if it makes a difference. are part of a course I teach that where they learn about these in undergrad. It's an undergraduate course, but you don't need supplies. Everybody has a journal or the colored pencils, or there's all kinds of things. We've been doing culturally sensitive meditation. If you have all the Native American animals you could pick from to write the script. I think it would be more fun and a supplement to this, and we'll take a look at it. But you don't. Most of these things are household items, or the schools
right.
have what they need.
There's tons of apps out there that accomplish a lot of the stuff that we're talking about too. But there's also tons of freely available, like guided imagery recordings and things like that, or scripts available online too. Right?
Oh, yes, definitely.
So it can cost a lot if you wanted to.
And then we're looking at, we might get into
ego health.
Don't you want to go tell them all the different
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
I thought we should.
Yep. I think that's a good idea.
I don't know, at some point we could talk longer, that we should go over the different empirically based mind-body health treatments and just some conversational styles so they know what they are. Sure. And kind of how you use them either in practice and then we can tell them what we're doing in research.
Good idea, Melissa. Let's do it.
That sounds great.
I'll start.
All right, go.
Okay, because I want to tell you about culturally sensitive meditation, because I feel like I've been using that in the school, so it's like it's real to me. It's not just research wise, but meditation goes back a long way, right? We all know that. But I got centered on they've heard this, the culturally sensitive piece, because one of my doctoral students was from that background, and she brought me in line with that. We started testing it out in research. But for culturally sensitive meditation, it's really easy to have students make scripts from little students up to you had mentioned you thought they always have to write, but it's not necessarily so, because you could make it in pictures or what have you. But there are rules to making meditative scripts, like they have to be a certain amount of lines. There's a mantra in there and certain kind of statements, right? But you can direct a group to make that. And with culturally sensitive, you use like animal pictures that are related to emotions. So you don't have to have a deficit, for instance. It doesn't have to be a child it could be just, a tier 1 type of intervention. What do you want to improve in yourself or bring out? Maybe you want to be more confident or more calm or what have you. And then they pick an animal that represents that. So like if it were a bear, that would be courage and power. A deer is for sensitivity and calmness. So you pick an animal, and then you can make like a PowerPoint kind of presentation. It could be made with a picture book, but they write a script that says like with the bear, I'm going to be powerful, courageous, and they repeat the mantra. And then you can put background music that's appropriate to whatever culture you're picking. I happen to learn more about this one. So the Native American. I think it's working really well, like with just kids in schools. It was fun. They had a product in the end. It was suited. It was idiosyncratic to what they wanted to do. So it was tailored to them. Right. Mm-hmm. And then they take that away and they can use it whenever they want in the future too, and it's collaborative, because, the integrated piece is what's dead on right now. We have to collaborate with other professionals. And in this particular hat, I was functioning as a speech path, but of course my mind is always swirled up in psychology anyways. It's difficult because my friends in speech path say, stay in your own lane, Melissa, when I go out, but I can't, so when we did this, it was a social worker, the school psych, the speech path. It works great. It was because you can incorporate writing into it, and that's where I came in. Even though
quite frankly,
it's great.
I think it's important that we should be interdisciplinary in our approaches to things with kids. Anything that we do in schools with kids should be collaborative, stay in our own lanes. Kids are
not in a
dimensional
single lane,
right? Yeah. We can't work in silos. So correct. I think we should work.
And this is right up all of mind body health. I think a lot of these treatments are interdisciplinary in nature, but certainly the writing, you can speak to that, but the culturally sensitive teaching meditation, you can bring other pieces into it. Sure. So I'll let them explain one of theirs. That one there is like, I like to talk about that one.
Do you want to talk about one of yours, or you want me to?
Go ahead.
Okay. So one of the things
I was thinking of the overlap. We should say something about the overlap with positive psych before we talk about the
in the writing ones, like gratitude writing.
Sure. Okay. So one of the ones that I typically will talk about is gratitude writing. And my background is in positive psychology. I had the privilege of being able to work in Martin Seligman's lab as an undergraduate. And so have a little bit of insight with respect to the Diathesis stress model. That was my first introduction to Martin Seligman's experiences and his his Optimistic Child book and so forth. If folks are familiar with that, that's one of his seminal works. In gratitude writing, and one of the ones that we typically teach about is like 3 good things. So having kids or adults, even when we're training and doing our professional development, we ask that the adults think about 3 good things, and it could be over the course of a week, it could be over the course of a day, just jotting down or thinking about 3 good things that have happened to you recently, right? Or it could be, over the last month, or however you want to frame it, so that people really focus on the good. And the idea is to really be generative in and focusing on positive things that have happened, because sometimes we do get kind of mired in all the negativity, right? All you have to do is sit in a faculty meeting for an hour and you see how that sort of catches like wildfire when someone says something negative, and then that is like, whoo, the negativity wildfire just really catches a lot more quickly than often the gratitude and happiness, goodness spreads. But when you do actively focus on the good, focus on 3 good things, it does incite positivity. It does sort of make you make a change, a shift in how you're thinking, right? Even driving to work sometimes, or driving to class, if you're going to graduate school, if there are graduate students listening. I know there are, because Emily buzzed in early. Shout out to Emily Winter. So just thinking about that, it's a really easy thing to implement. It's a kind of a push pause in the classroom and be like, hey, just take out a piece of paper or pull out your Chromebook. Like right now, we're just going to think of 3 good things that happened, because we need to restart.
A lot of people are talking about gratitude right now. Like people are using it like at the dinner table.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's really simple. In any
we
setting.
do something similar at my dinner table. We don't call it 3 good things. We actually do high-low buffalo. I don't know if anybody knows that. It's sort of like highlight what your high was for today, talk about what your low was, and then your buffalo is just sort of like a random. So you can make it another high, you could make it a low, or it could just be some like, hey, I wore some mismatched socks today. I don't know, I just made that up. But so it kind of allows a little bit more flexibility, I guess, with that. But, it's just really about allowing people to focus and intentionally look for the good and look for the positive things when they're engaged in that, and really shift, because oftentimes I think it is I know it is our bent to lean toward the negative.
Yeah, and so this is another one of those things, really simple and easy to implement, but then the more you do it, the idea is that it won't be so hard to think of things, and it will come more naturally, and you'll be doing it more often.
And as Melissa said, I think it was you that said it earlier, it might have been you, Cheryl, integrating, one of you to my right, integrating things that then becomes a practice within the classroom, or within your at your dinner table, wherever you are, within your classroom, within your school, within your household. It just becomes within your car driving to work, right? It just becomes your practice. I'm going to think of 3 good things today, or 3 good things that happened yesterday, or 3 good things that I'm going to do with intention today.
And we've done the research on this with asthma and such. And you want to tell them about the flip side, even though it is, if you want to call it, stressful events, but you have to mention written emotional expression, because it's a viable empirical strategy.
Sure. So the written emotional expression piece is kind of the counterpart to this, and the written emotional expression is really about I kind of hasten to use the word purging, but it is sort of writing about stressful
and traumatic events.
Right.
I make sure you get Well, go ahead.
What she said. Right. Yeah. Stressful and traumatic events. So that you can, and I like to think about it as, we all probably have done something similar at some point where something has really gotten under, and to maybe a lesser extent, right? Something maybe has gotten under our skin during the day at work, let's say. You've gotten a really nasty email and you really want to respond to that, and you type that email feverishly, and maybe hopefully you don't send it, don't hit send impulsively, right? But just getting that out allows you to release that, right? And don't just leave it there, right? Or but really the written emotional expression is to allow you to purge something that is stressful, that is traumatic in your history, that allows you to kind of put a pin in it, to let that go. You know, we sort of use in therapeutic settings, sometimes it's kind of like letting that red balloon float up, right, and away from us, and releasing it, so that we can kind of purge that and make space for healthier, happier things, right? So that is a process. It is not something, obviously, that we would encourage classroom teachers to do. Hopefully the school psychologists are the ones, or the counselors who are.
They could rephrase it as a challenge.
They could rephrase it,
Struggles,
right?
challenge.
Right. They could do it something, obviously, if they did something within the classroom and something traumatic were to come up in writing, they would.
It is, or it's confidential. On, you know, when we do it in research, when they did, you know, challenging and stressful and traumatic events, they were put into opaque containers. You can't see it. It's, you know, but then we linguistically did it with software to check to make sure they did say the right words. You know what I mean? That was typed in later. But in a classroom, I would change the words instead of
So sometimes
struggles, challenges,
right? And sometimes, you know, there are obviously like gradients, I guess, of this. So sometimes you might have like a worry jar, right, where kids would write something stressful or whatnot. It's not quite
it's not quite the same.
Written emotional expression by definition really is, because it really is, as you said, stressful and traumatic events. That's truly the definition of it. But, you know, a different gradient would be a worry jar, where a kid just puts something in there and lets that be, or they write it down and then they let that go so that they can refocus their energy and attention on the task at hand. Same thing that we might do as adults, right? Too. And this is what we've been doing in our professional development workshops with folks in schools, is teaching them these strategies that they can employ themselves. Just take a couple of minutes, write it down. We probably do some of these things ourselves, right? Like, I just need to write that down because I need to make a note of that and come back to it later. I like to say, like, just put a pin in it for later, because I can't attend to it right now. I got 14 kids I got to attend to at my door. But I don't want to let it go.
You know, I like that. I think of it just as you sort of mentioned the gradients. You know, teachers can do a tier 1 sort of, you know, our universal practices in the classroom can be helping kids, you know, do some gratitude exercises as well as address some challenges. I like that word, challenges, Melissa. And then as we would get into counseling groups, perhaps, or individual tier 2 and tier 3 sort of work, that makes sense. You know, we can address that at different levels. I did want to ask, you know, in my reading over the last few years, of course, reading more and more about the ACE study and how adverse experiences have impacted, and we're finally getting some research, you know, or research from the medical field is sort of crossing over now. And what are some of the bigger medical or physiological challenges that, you know, you mentioned asthma. What are some of the others that you've done some research with, or that you're seeing prevalent in the schools?
Well, I can start naming the ones that have the most research on and they're most prevalent. Juvenile diabetes, for instance, Michelle Perfect from the University of Arizona, she's done a lot looking at, you know, kids with juvenile diabetes and what the glucose levels that change relative to mental health. So that definitely is building. Actually, there's quite a lot of work there with that. Asthma, like I mentioned to you, cardiovascular disease. Now that stretches into the upper age levels, into adults as well. But there are, I'm going to name all the 12 because really these 12 are across all of those. These 12 treatments. I know I'm fussy on the number, but I have always been fussy on the number. I can't help it. It's either 10, 11, or 12, depending on what. I'm the one who does, the research that's there, that's enough to make it justifiable. But okay, so I'll go back to your question. Asthma, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, cancer. Yeah, and I was going to stop at that one to give you some more background on what's been done with cancer, like at the Yukon Health Center in the NEAG, our companion site, the Comprehensive Cancer Center. They have done, first of all, they've done things with using certain psychological therapies for coping, for pain management, but that is different than looking at hard biological data. But they have looked at that too with immune markers. And if you look in the literature, there is building research looking at time to death, tumor growth, and those sorts of things. That I find that interesting with the cancer realm. UConn's InChip has a whole cancer rig. Like we have a research intensive group that's mind, body, health. There's also a cancer research intensive group that looks at just kind of the things we're talking about here. I was going to tell you.
Stress, anxiety, depression.
Those are the big, yeah. Thank you for reminding me. Yeah, because I guess the two sides of the coin are, what are the big psychological pieces that have the data? That's anxiety. Stress, which is, it's not a DSM category, but, there are certainly solid, psychometrically sound indices to look at stress. So that's viable when you say,
and
stress.
Biological markers.
Anxiety, right? Various biological markers that are like, you can do,
cortisol.
Right. Yes. And also the ILs, the immune markers are in there for that piece. Depression is another one. Anxiety is the biggie though. And that, I don't think that would surprise anybody out there, that anxiety is on the rise from little kids on, and its implications for physical health there's more data on that relative to, say, depression. And then that's where stress comes in. Happiness, which is another, we could get into that, theories of happiness later if we want, but there's measurements that you can look at that. But did I miss any biggies that I want to tell you about? The diabetes, arthritis in kids, juvenile arthritis, that has, certainly a data set there relative to mind, body health. I think I named the big ones: asthma, anxiety, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, juvenile arthritis, cancer. Yeah, I said it right. Yeah, those are there's other ones out there. I'm not, but they have a lot more data, what I just said. Yeah. Oh, and then let me just bring up quickly, which is, we have not done this, but we're dabbling in some of it.
What's it going to be?
We're starting down this road, a little bit. We know the literature base, but we haven't run as many studies. Lung function, really, asthma is the one I know the best, is the GI problems. Gastrointestinal. I mean, we know the kids. I know, Rachel, you must see this, the runs to the nurse, they have a stomach ache, you have a headache, those, that are related to psychological underpinnings, but then true GI issues that are related to psyche. That is in the literature. I can't say that I have done that myself. Asthma, I can talk about for real, and lung function.
We know
there's my spirometer.
Adults for sure.
Yeah. Well, I think
we know about kids like with colitis and other,
So I think does that say it? That's how I try to say it. There's 12 treatments. Then we talk about the psychological problems like anxiety, stress, depression that have the most research, and those topics that you just asked me, Eric, which physiological outcomes. That's how it makes sense to me. And then you look at the dualism, the mind to the body to the mind, and these outcomes. And then what can you do? And then back, Rachel, and it's not to say that, the therapies that, perhaps would have been discussed tonight, should we have had our third-party interviewer here, that those have the same commonalities, and they do help. They focus your attention and so forth,
Yeah, I think that the term foundational, I think that kind of summed it up for me, that, these are kind of basic things that you see, amongst all the, we have various therapies that have different complexity level type of things, but I think that they all have kind of that foundational basis.
a lot of the things that we've talked about, like those cafe conversations I was saying when we first started talking about the book, it's like everything's interrelated, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have a stress, anxiety that impacts sleep, and then that now impacts 10 other things, right? And you have a anxiety impacting social relationships, and now that's causing problems with, school, academics and all these other areas. So everything's kind of interrelated, and that's what makes it.
Well, Michelle Perfect, who does the diabetes, a lot of her, she has a lot on sleep work too, and
Yeah.
and then there are the interrelationships, like you said, of course.
Sleep is huge, and I try and remind myself when I'm doing my parent interviews for evaluations to ask, when do they go to bed? Do they have a set bedtime? Are they waking up? Because that's, huge, especially with, I find a lot of kids are up late on devices and the parents might not even know about it. So it's like, you need to cut off the Wi-Fi because they're falling asleep in class and it's snowballing and
Absolutely.
I don't want to go off on too much of a tangent because I know you want to get through all these kind of evidence-based practices and whatnot. But when you had mentioned too, like the lung capacity and these physical measures and stuff, I was really intrigued by that. And I know that in psychology, oftentimes it's a Likert scale. It's how are you feeling? It's, how many times does this happen? But I'm intrigued by physiological kind of measures. We had a guest on that talked about using an oximeter, to see heartbeat, heart rate and whatnot, and then calming down and trying to get that rate down, like kind of a biofeedback type of thing. And I thought that was a really good idea. So I don't know if you could talk a little bit more about some of the work that you do in the measurement, and is there any way to bridge that into schools? I don't know.
There is. Well, first of all, for asthma, it's standardized spirometry is the way to go, but it's not as, we always retrain the team. In fact, when this IRB goes through and these, the students, the doc students, and we had a med student or two in there, and some that they kind of supervise the master's, undergrad, what have you. We'll all go to CCMC, and Dr. Craig Schramm who's retired. I got to find a new pulmonologist. Has always trained our team back on the spirometry. But okay, if you go in there, it's a little bit more elaborate. But I'm staring at it right there. That's my new one that hasn't been opened because of COVID. We had some problems, and you had to do things in different ways. But we're going to be able to run the standardized spirometry. It hooks right to your laptop. It has, a hose and a mouthpiece, and you change those out. Those are not expensive, and the readings go right that are recorded. It's not that difficult.
So tell them what they do with a spirometer, because
they
people
blow
don't
into
know
it.
what a spirometer is unless you worked
okay.
on a.
All right, spirometer is
How many school psychologists know what a spirometer is? You don't.
I've said that word a million times.
I know, of course you have.
Yeah, but a spirometer is just
Yeah.
a standardized way to measure lung functioning. Spirometry versus a peak flow meter. Like you've seen those where you blow and the little ball goes up or so forth. I should rip open my boxes here. I've got a bunch of those too.
People don't know this.
It seems so common to me. I don't know why.
Because you've done this for 25 years.
Yeah, I guess I'm getting old too. That's the problem.
So they breathe in.
So you hook it to the laptop. It has a cord. You breathe in, and you have to do a certain amount of blows. You can't overdo it. You stop it because you could induce it. Yeah, you have to be with a carpeted floor. IRB is, you have to have it right, because that's the only study I worry about. As the rest and I never used to worry as much in the old days. Like I really didn't. Nothing's going to happen. Now I'm like, in the summer, who's going to be here? Because I don't want something to go wrong, because you do have everything in place should a problem occur.
Yes. Okay. Spirometer.
So you breathe into it, and I get the readings, the FEF, FEV 25, 75. It tells you measures of larger airflow, small airway flow. Then you track those across the study, and from baseline to intervention to follow-up if your treatment is impacting what those are called lung capacity values, right? And then we also do at the same time what you're referring to, the rating scales. Yeah. Okay, are you anxious, and so forth. So standardized spirometry is the best way. Peak flows and all are not the top way to go. School nurses could definitely help you with that. We were supposed to do a school nurse, remember, presentation. It got canceled last year, talking about lung problems relative to psychological health, and how could what would they be seeing in these kids, and kids that are coming down all the time. You could be anxious, and maybe it has something to do with lung values or lung functioning. But let me tell you some other nifty stuff that you can do, which I'm bought, was the hexaskins. I have a bunch of those. We got to start using this stuff. It is getting me upset because I've had all this equipment and I've been held up because of COVID. That's why this IRB is going in. I've got this group. We're doing it.
Okay.
Okay. The hexaskins they wear is like a vest. Did you ever see them?
No.
I'll show them to him. Johanna loves these. These are great. This is one of my doctoral students who's graduated. You wear this, the hexaskin. It does your heart rate. It does lung function. It gives you stress values. They're really good. They're called hexaskins. You could do that in the school. It's a little elaborate because it's a whole vest.
Yeah,
the thing you'd use,
put that
Rachel,
in
would
your
be
school budget.
you'd have to use the wrists. Those are not that expensive. The wristbands that will do heart rate.
Sorry.
And values like that would be handy. Really, I'm telling you, this is
No,
But
I
there
yeah.
are a lot of biofeedback programs and apps. Again,
Yes.
so like there's a lot
Yes,
of
you let her
more
talk. She's
elaborate
good at
things that
that.
you
Yeah,
can do.
that you can do on an easier way that are
yeah,
free.
that would
Yes,
be
of course,
available.
of
Right,
course,
right.
they've done that. Yeah, absolutely. Like for test anxiety or whatever, you
Mhm.
can use. It'll show you. It's a biofeedback, which is a therapy in and of itself, but it's a way to collect data. Should you want to see physical measures with psych measures, and don't forget the three big ones, which we didn't talk a lot about tonight: physical health, psychological health, and academic outcomes. Those are all intertwined, as one. How does the child perform academically relative to their psyche versus, and then also their physical health? And that's why collaborative teaming is what we have to do, because you need all these people to make sense out of this, right? And you're never really sure. You can't be, I know it's easy for me to say because I only come there the day a week and you're there every day and it is a lot going on. You have all these students, but you don't want to rush it because you never really can tell what's going on with a student until you think of all these, factors, as I say them, and how they're, influencing one another. But you can do it in schools, and that's where we're headed. I'll tell you one other piece, and then I'll let you talk before I forget this. The technologies that are going forward to help with behavioral health or, physical and mental health and academic, what I just said, like video self-modeling, which is that's what I learned that originally years ago. Now, again, I did say 17 years. That is wrong because I was, remember, 21 at UConn, 2 at St. John's, and then 8 in the schools, and then the doctorate getting that too. Yeah. But video self-modeling I did for my dissertation for stuttering. But video self-modeling, and then we went to virtual reality, the 360. Johanna got me involved in that. And now we're using that with the University of Utah.
Should say her full name.
I'm sorry, Doctor. I always say my doctoral. Everyone's my they're Leah.
Everyone.
They're about. Meanwhile, Leah's been graduated for a long time, but I always say my doctoral student because once you do, that's forever. Johanna Tiarks, Dr. She's at Adelphi. Yeah. I'm in charge. See, I feel like I'm getting old. I didn't want to be the senior person and sit in the middle and everything. I really don't, but it's coming to the point that it's the way it is. It used to be Tom Kale, but I have his old office and a lot of
We're all her disciples. That's what it is.
I had to take over.
And Eric, when you introduced her and you read her bio and you said all of these amazing things about her, the thing that the reason why you encounter everyone who it's not like 6 degrees of separation or 6 degrees of Melissa Bray. It's less than that. The other thing to know is that this woman is also incredibly humble and kind. Like everybody
That's nice of you to say.
who encounters her. I was out
That's
to
why
dinner.
people talk about
Exactly.
you.
I was out to dinner like 2 weeks ago, and some woman who knew you from the school was like, "Oh my god."
Oh, I thought I was coming on too strong tonight, but I wanted to get these points across. I'm afraid if I don't say it, it's not going to come
I
out.
love it. I do want to say something about so one thing, just to kind of
Don't forget, I got to go back to the technology, but I'll do it after.
Okay.
Go
All
ahead.
right, go. Do you want to go there? Go ahead. Say it.
I'm going to say it quick because then you can take it to another direction.
All right,
In all
go.
seriousness,
Yeah,
then
do
you
it.
can take it.
Do it.
Because video self-modeling and virtual reality relative to mind-body health is fairly new using in the physical health realms.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
We've used video self-modeling for whole kinds of physical outcomes, academic outcomes. There's been some with depression, the Khan study, but as far as improving anxiety and some of the other, using it for mind-body health is a little bit more beginning. But virtual reality is taking us to a next level. And I'm thinking what you said, and I'm going to explain something more else. You said, you need a couple of minutes out, right, from say in a teaching moment or whatever. Well, in this the University of Utah combined with UConn, and it's going to start this fall. I've told you this. It's going. We already had to write a lot of these paperworks up for inventive things and this and that. But it's going to be virtual reality software that they're designing to be used to train pre-service school psychologists, pre-service teachers, paraprofessionals on all kinds of strategies, right? So you're going to go into a sim, you put on the goggles, and it'll train you in whatever it is they need to know, whatever skill. But mind, body, health, strategies and how to deliver them will be included in this. It's going to be a series of trainings, but I happen to have money from UConn that I could put in, which was good, with Utah, and they have their GAP lab, which is engineers that are also trained in the fine arts. It's a perfect place. You can look it up later. It's called the GAP lab at the University of Utah. And Aaron Fisher, who was Dr. Aaron Fisher, a school psychology professor at Utah, who's fantastic with technology. And this is going to be taking place. Yeah, And the engineers will design it. We tell them what skills we want.
So he's like the subject matter expert.
Right, correct. That's where I come in too, really. Right. I don't know how to design the software, but that's an endeavor. And I find it exciting using the technology to move towards training these skills, and certainly including the mind, body, health pieces. Yeah.
Should we explain video self-modeling?
I can explain that. Video self-modeling.
Should we need a break?
I have to do this one because I'll do video self-modeling. I'll take it to you next.
I forget what
we've all done all this research together and all these different treatments. But when we do a talk, like not that I consider this a talk because this is natural. I'm coming alive. We were a little bit nervous about this, but it's turned out great. We're just taking our piece. When we do a PD or some sort of research presentation, we sort of have a breakdown of how I start the welcome. This one, but now, so let me just tell you, VSM is mine because I've done that forever. I was trained from, Tom Kalin how to do video self-modeling. That means you're using a video that you watch of yourself. So where it's exemplary behavior, and then they're not sure, but I'll say through learning theory, like classical conditioning, or perhaps changes in your memory, which there's a lot of research on that coming. And it possibly could be that when you watch this video, your memory is changed. Mm-hmm. You watch it and then you learn, or your memory's changed and you perform the new behavior. I'll give you an example, but it cannot be something that you can't do. So it's been used for physical things, but they're not going to make me a high diver if I can't do the pieces. It's not in my repertoire. But like with stuttering, I had an idea when I was a doctoral student. I said, a lot of people learn. Stuttering is caused by a whole bunch of things, physiological, but I could go on. But there's a subset where it's learned. You've learned to stutter. So in those cases, video self-modeling, and this has been over the course of a long time, and we're replicating it again. Joe Hanna, Dr. Tiarks did it with VR. This is a little plug for me.
Okay.
So if you want to say this is not so I'm not being like that humble. No, really internationally this was great the day because Tom went crazy when he heard this. University of Sydney, Australia, they replicated these results. So it wasn't just us, with stuttering. But if you learn to stutter and I make a video that shows you not stuttering in a situation where you usually do, like I'm a kid who stutters, I've learned, I'm afraid. Some of it's anxiety, remember. That's where it's fuzzy. Nobody's sure. I stutter when the teacher asks me a question, but I can talk fluently to my friends. You have an idea. It's across that it's probably learned if it's different across settings, right? That gives me some hope that it was learned. Then I show the video of them speaking fluently to their teacher. If you really want to know how to make those, I'll tell you. I have, like right now we're doing one for selective mutism because that's another big,
Did you have a book out called Picture Perfect?
Yeah, Picture Perfect.
Root?
Yeah, we had a little, with Dr. Melissa Root, who came out of the program with me hand in hand, has done a lot. She does a lot with video self-modeling, a lot of trainings. And we wrote a step-by-step kind of how to do it. But the students help me too. Like Michael Lee, one of my good doctoral students here, he's going to help edit this video for selective mutism. You use iMovie, and he's really good with technology and all. But it really is basic. So I think most people, you don't have to be afraid of it anymore. You can
so you edit out the parts of the video where they're not exhibiting the skill, and then you're only showing them over and over.
Either you have to edit, I'm going to get a lot of footage recording, which I have enough that's, that shows what I want. Then I can just edit out what I don't want. Or if they can't do it, then I get it in another way. Like for selective mutism, you would do it when none of the kids are in the room. Yeah. You can get or if you have to, you go to the home and then you take the snippets and edit them in. But that's video self-modeling. Okay. I do.
Is that good?
I'm glad
you understand that. Okay.
It works.
Yes.
Powerful. Let me tell you, the first time I used to not believe it with Tom. I really didn't. I said, what? It's like magic. Yeah. And when you see that work, it's like, what? It's powerful and it does work, but you have to do it for the right You have to know what you're doing. You know, it has to be where it would be anxiety-based, learn-based. Go ahead.
I was going to say just to kind of extend that, one of the first examples that I saw of this was with Tom, and this was with a video cassette.
Oh yeah,
that
we had
had been
old
spliced.
equipment. Yeah,
So it didn't even have to be, a pretty.
No, now we're
example,
seamless.
right?
It doesn't have. Now it looks good.
I mean,
it's seamless. It was choppy and it
but
still
to be
works.
effective,
It
it
still
didn't
works.
have to be.
Nope.
It didn't have to be pretty. So the example that Tom first showed my class, my cohort, was a probably adolescent girl who would not speak. She was selective, had selective mutism.
He did allow it.
She would not speak at school at all, but she would only speak in the kitchen when her mom was preparing dinner. Do you remember that?
Yes,
case?
I do.
And so he took video of the teacher asking the girl questions in the classroom. The girl said nothing in the classroom. And then he took video of the mom while she was preparing dinner, asking the girl the very same questions. And he just took a very close
you have to
frame, video of the girl.
We still do it that way.
Right. And then he spliced it so that it looked like, even though it was in the girl's kitchen, but it was just like her against the wall.
Yeah, you try to.
So it wasn't pretty. Like, it did not look like she was in the classroom answering the teacher's questions, but it was the teacher asking the question. The girl, was just back and forth, and it worked. So it was bizarre that it worked, but now it's much more sophisticated, much easier. You can use, as Cheryl said, iMovie to get it to work. And it's
there's a long history.
Oh, you didn't say that? I thought you mumbled it, but all right, maybe I just filled that in. But that illustrates Melissa's point that your memory just fills stuff in.
Well, yeah.
And
So it's been video self-modeling has like a 50-year history of research with all different things, but selective mutism is an area that has quite a bit that we've done a lot with. But it is very powerful. There's something about your mind that you don't even because everything's psychology to me, and it's something that we really don't know. Suzanne Margiano, Dr. Suzanne Margiano, she did an autobiographical memory study with video self-modeling and did see effects that could be it. It's kind of like Loftus's work where, memory implants and, criminal cases and all that. That's the thought. But really at this point, I could never say with assurance to you why that works. Probably it could be a little bit of both, or definitely some learning theory,
Probably they want us to move on.
We'll move on. Move on to you, Carrie.
No, I mean, my comment was just going to go back to the whole piece about
don't forget what your
physical
nature.
Okay, well, let's go to this first because I feel like we need to talk about the interventions.
All right, let's quickly. What do we have? 2 minutes here left. Let's talk about everything else.
And we are. I could just sit here forever and listen to you all. I think so.
Yes.
Whatever your time you're willing to give, I will stay here.
What were you going to say a minute ago when I?
No, it was. I was going to try and sort of weave together the piece about what you said about physical health, mental health, and academic performance. And all I was going to say was really all of this. It comes back to, for us as school psychologists, we all know that kids can't engage and perform academically if they're not available to learn, right? So, our intention in equipping kids with and equipping professionals with the tools to help kids is really to increase their ability to engage and to be able to perform academically, because the thing that we sort of, I don't know, sort of a silly, I guess, I don't know if it's even like a colloquialism, whatever we say, but it's you have to Maslow before you bloom, right? You have to address those basic needs that kids have, that we all have. And it is certainly unrealistic to think that kids are available to learn if they are physically or mentally unwell. So our intention in talking about mind body health and trying to equip people with tools that will readily allow for those things to be bolstered is to allow for kids to more so engage and hopefully increase their ability to perform academically as well. That's all I was going to say. That was sort of a wrap up, but now
I love it.
I'm going to name my 12 up before
I know you are. That's
But why don't you talk about exercise for a second? Because
Yeah, so my dissertation was about physical activity, so brief breaks for physical activity in the classroom. And I was excited about this for a lot of the same reasons. It's, something that wasn't like a manual that you had to buy, right? These are just simple exercises. It was just me and the teacher did third grade students. And so she just kind of led them through like different sports activities. So she kind of had them standing in place, pretending like they were skiing or doing a jump shot or really simple things that, kind of everybody knows what they are. But it got them really moving, and it was just a 10-minute break. And then we observed, just me, and it's somebody else, for 30% of the sessions for IOA, but observed their engagement afterward. And so we were able to say, here's a really quick, simple way to not only bring up the level or the amount of physical activity that kids were engaging in during the school day, but also to improve engagement afterward, which obviously was appealing to, teachers and administrators. So that was kind of my entryway into this, was sort of the body mind part, I guess, because of all of the research behind physical activity, how beneficial it is for attention and engagement and things like that. But also there was a lot of learning and, cognitive benefits. So was that what I was supposed to say?
Yeah, that's good, because I know it's 8, or 9 rather. I was going to name the 12, and then that's why I told her to say that. So gratitude writing.
We did.
We did that. And then written emotional expression, which is the other one. Mindfulness, which you're all aware of. And a lot of those pieces are, again, what you said, Rachel, they're built into other, focus at body scans, breathing. Nature, which we didn't mention a lot on. So at the end, I'll just say a piece on nature or eco-health. Physical activity, that's why I had her do that. Video self-modeling, virtual reality, deep breathing, progressive muscle relaxation, which I think most people know. Yes, she mentioned that. Guided imagery, relaxation, guided imagery, meditation, and yoga. There's your 12 that have some data for mind, body health, and if you will, academics and educational implications. I'll say one closing thought on eco-health or nature. There's that is becoming, it's not a new idea, but research is building in that area, and it's been being used in a lot of realms for stress reduction and anxiety relief for graduate students, medical students, kids in schools. There's certain poses, and like the fox walk. In CHIP recently had Michael Martali come and speak about nature. He has a great book on that from Kropali. But there's a lot of things you can do. You can do poses.
Talk about horticulture here. Some of
the plant horticulture. We have a professor here that approached our lab and is doing Jonathan Morris, his name, looking at plants, growing plants with seeds, and then taking care of them. And he had the kids over in the child labs, that are there that planted them, and then they gave them to undergrads, and they're looking at their emotional well-being as a result of doing that. But being out in nature in many realms, we teach in our, I have not run a study on this, but we're drawing from research using mandalas that have nature elements to it. They're divided by the calendar year, or those kinds of things that
Another popular term people are using now is forest bathing, right?
Yes. Those are popular phrases for those kinds of maneuvers and strategies, right?
Can I drop a name too?
Mm-hmm. Of course. I was trying to give people credit.
I'm just teasing. So one of my doctoral students, McKenna Murtaugh, actually did a study with just nature videos. So there's a lot of support for the use of, if you can't actually go out and be in nature and be outside, then there's actually effects with just watching nature videos.
Yeah. Actually, so for the meditation piece, tying in nature too, some of the things that could be used within school. So one of the things when we were presenting at NASP, there were some questions or sort of feedback from some of the attendees. So, if I work in an urban setting, I really don't have the opportunity to take kids out in nature. So how might we do this? So even in using videos or in some of the apps that we have that are readily accessible, especially if you're an educator, an app like Calm is free to educators. So you can download that and use those on your phone. Sounds of nature. Everywhere you work has a sky outside. So clouds are available to everyone. So you can always, look up at the clouds. You don't have to have large open spaces in order to kind of reflect on nature. So
yeah, that's a great place if we're ready to wrap up, because that's kind of our whole message at the end of all of these PDs that we do, is that it's the little bits and pieces. It's making it an intentional practice. It's not like when we talk about physical activity, it's not like, oh, I got to go to the gym, so I've got to get a gym membership. It's going to take me 10 minutes to get into my gym clothes. I've got to drive there. Then I have to do all, an hour of exercise or a half hour, whatever. And then I've got to, shower and all these things. But if you can put in, 5-10 minutes in these little breaks throughout the day, then you've got your 30 minutes at the end of the day and you're feeling fresh, keep the blood flowing all day long. Yeah. And it's the same thing with the mindfulness practices, right? We're saying they're foundational. They're kind of in everything that you do and choosing what you eat or what you watch on TV or whatever. But it's just the little bits and pieces, I think, that make it
absolutely
manageable, and that you're also going to gain a lot more benefit.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love it. That's awesome. First, I just want to say thank you, because the three of you are so much fun, and this was just delightful to get to just hear and be a part of a conversation with the three of you. So that was really enjoyable. Yeah. And something that I find just wonderful is that just the connection with research. I mean, obviously the three of you are professors, but just hearing how embedded that is into everything you're doing and what you're thinking. I think as school psychologists, as practitioners, we sometimes talk about the ivory tower of the research and that there's a gap between practitioners and research. And there doesn't need to be. And so I'm hearing all these ideas and hearing how you're connecting with schools and setting up, research programs, connecting with our Connecticut Children's Hospital and, and physicians, and making all this work. And I think for practitioners out there, if you have an idea, talk to somebody. If you all are, much more comfortable and it's easier for you to make things work, we could share ideas with you and connect, especially if you're getting into schools. And
Absolutely.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, definitely reach out to us. I mean, I will, I don't want to
offer a sell up. Go ahead.
But I will say, yeah, definitely. I mean, in our new center, we would love to reach out into schools and reach into our center at the university and create some innovative projects. So if you have ideas, we would love to partner with you. So
absolutely.
Please.
I love that. And also, who is the publisher of the book, Cheryl, that you and Melissa wrote?
Oh, APA.
Okay. And that was promoting mind-body health in the schools, intervention for mental health professionals.
That's right. Thank you.
Okay. So we'll have people look for that, and we can post a link to that in the video as well.
Thank you.
It's on Amazon, even though it's through APA. So on their site, but it might be cheaper on Amazon.
Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome. I love all this. And I think in school, sometimes we feel like we have to buy this boxed program. We have to buy this particular curriculum type of thing. But a lot of what you're talking about, you can be evidence-based and following the research and kind of, pulling from different things and using it, like you're saying, 5 minutes here and just being mindful and trying to do that with, some consistency to get it in.
And I appreciate saying that, because I think a lot of people feel like they have to do that, but also kind of rely on that and want to do that. And so it's asking people to branch out a little bit and break it up and be a little more creative too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we, as school psychologists, you have to trust that you have the skills to evaluate whether what you're doing is actually working, right? So don't be prescriptive, be evaluative. And I think that that's really the key to determining whether something is truly the right thing to do for a kid.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. This was a fun conversation, and I definitely learned a lot too. So going to be looking more into those 12 things.
Awesome.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun. We appreciate it.
you.
Good to meet you.
Yes, please stay in touch.